This video is intended as a supplement to that produced by Carl Surrey recently on colouring in mandalas using gradients, effects, textures and so on. Very good video, but there are one or two things I'd like to add to the discussion. Some people will like them, others will think they're a waste of time. But here we go. I'm going to open the mandala, slightly different one this time by the way, and say that this panel here relates to text. So as we've got no text in this PDF, then we can ignore that. Serif has added an sRGB color space, which is useful. You will also notice that it's added the image as a layer and it's called it image, which is not editable. But if you right click on that and select rasterize, it is editable. Job done. Now, for my own purposes, I am actually going to crop this image on a one-to-one basis because I think it looks better when you do. I would say that's about right. There we go. I like that better. Okay, now I'm going to show you some of the disciplines that I learned when watching the Affinity tutorials prepared by Simon Foster on Udemy. They are not free, but they're not expensive either. So let me hope I do Simon justice. First of all, I'm going to rename this layer. No, I don't need to do that. Rename it original. Then I'm going to duplicate it and call that one base. I'll switch off the original layer in the hope that I don't need it. It's there as a layer of last resort. Now I've got the base layer selected, I can do my first selection, which will be a very simple one of this inner ring using the flood selection tool. As you can see, it's very quick and easy to do. Now the first thing I'm going to do with that is I'm actually going to save that selection as a spare channel. Would you believe? And here it is, down the bottom, spare channel. And we're going to rename that inner ring. Now, if for any reason I want to come back and look again at this particular object, I can do so very, very easily. Now, in this particular case, this was a very easy selection to do. But just imagine that I had been doing a selection of all these flowers around the edge, where there are lots and lots of little segments and lots of the flowers. It would take quite a long time to do, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Now, let me demonstrate this by deselecting my inner ring. All I have to do to get it back is right click on inner ring, load to pixel selection, and there it is. So now what we've got to do is to duplicate this. I'll call that layer inner ring. Then surprisingly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into a group, which I'm also going to call inner ring. Which I'm putting in capitals so that it's easy to distinguish between groups and layers. So now I'm working within this group called inner ring. Anything I do in here will be confined to that group. And if I want to put several layers in there and then later want to mask out part of this group, I can put a mask on the whole layer and it will apply equally to all the components within it, which is why you create the group. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate this by adding a fill layer, popping a gradient across it like that. I'll change the right hand end of this to a bright yellow, like so. I'll pull these in. I only put them out there because they're easier to find if they're not in the middle of a clutter. And that'll do for that layer, I think. We'll move on. We'll go back to our base layer and we'll do another selection, this time of the main flower in the middle. Flood selection tool again. Make sure we're on add this time because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bits of that layer to do, and for some reason it's still selected. Oh, I forgot to do a Control D to deselect it, but I've used Alt Select and that's got rid of it. So I've now got just the main flower selected. It's exactly what I want. Once again, I'm going to save that selection as a spare channel. And you'll see that it's down here. Right click, rename main flower. So now I duplicate the base layer and I rename it main flower. And I'm going to put that into a group as well, which I will call main flower. That's good. So we're going within that group now, and I'm going to demonstrate one of the goodies that comes when you work with, when you upload or upgrade to Affinity 1.6, which you can see I'm using. You can see that because of the light user interface. Okay, so where do we go from here? The next thing I'm going to do is to select the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to come over to my brushes, and you will see that I've got here some brushes from Frankentoon, which in fact I downloaded when I upgraded my Affinity Designer, but these brushes work perfectly well in Photo. The one I particularly like is this one because it just produces such a nice effect. I'll go to the colour, make sure that I'm on this nice deep red, and I will just paint some spots over this area. Then I'm going to add a fill layer to it. It's that bright blue. Okay. What we'll do with that is we'll drop the opacity to about there. And we'll have a look at some of the blend modes that I can use. Oh, look what's happening here. All kinds of fun and games. I think I'll go with that, which is subtract. Right, that looks quite interesting. But now I can do something else. I can add a function. And I'm going to go for outline. Change that colour to a nice green. Actually, it's fairly greeny in there. I think I'll go for an orange instead. Make that a little bit more intense, like that, and increase the radius. Isn't that interesting? Right, one final thing before we close down is that I want to show you some of the very nice textures that are supplied with Affinity Photo 1.6. So all we want to do here is go back to our base layer and duplicate it, and I'm going to call this one just texture. I will put it in a group, although it's not strictly necessary in this case. Texture, just for the sake of maintaining the discipline. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import or place a texture. I'm going to use that Aurora one. Takes a second or two to grab it from my server where it's stored. There we are. That's amazing, isn't it? It's even more amazing if you look at the selections, the various things that you can do. Look at that. I rather like that one. Just contrast, negate. So there we are. That's all I'm going to do for this demonstration video. It adds to all the detail that Carl put into his proper tutorial, and I hope the introduction of the discipline of groups and saving the selections to spare channels may help you keep the job organized, because I can tell you that by the time you have finished doing one of these mandalas, you'll have 15, 20 or maybe more layers in your work. So I hope that's been fun.